Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little. I'm here today with another hand for PokerNews.com. This hand is from a 2,000 euro buy-in event that I played recently. We are playing a little bit more than 100 big blinds deep, and blinds are 75, 150, and we have 22,000 chips. So a splashy 40-year-old player limps under the gun, and then a good loose aggressive kid makes it 600, which is 4 big blinds, in the hijack seat. And then they fold around to me on the button with 9-7 of hearts. And this is a marginal hand that I think folding is perfectly acceptable with. I don't think you need to be playing these hands. But at the same time, 9-7 suited flops pretty well. And I am on the button, so that combination of things is going to make me want to see a flop a lot of the time. And I would be pretty shocked if I fold at this point. I'm going to call the majority of the time. You could also 3-bet if you feel like it. Like if you think you're going to have a ton of fold equity or get called a lot pre-flop and then have a lot of fold equity after the flop, then re-raising is also acceptable. But I'm going to call the majority of the time. So flop comes 7-6-3, 2 spades, 1 heart. So this is a pretty good flop for me. We have top pair and some backdoor draws. We have backdoor straight draws and flush draws, which is always nice. And at this point, what should we do? We are facing the 1,200 bet into the 2,000 pot. And I think both calling and raising are okay options. But I definitely think that calling is going to be the best choice here. If we call, notice that there are a lot of good turns for me, first off. But also, if we raise and then get re-raised, we're going to need to fold. And I certainly don't want to fold this hand. The one benefit of raising is that it makes your opponent fold hands like ace, king, and queen, jack that have a decent amount of equity against you. But I think that that's not really the main concern here. The main concern at this point is to figure out a way not to go broke when we happen to be absolutely crushed. So how do we avoid going broke when we're absolutely crushed? Well, we just call and we see what develops. So this is a spot where I am definitely going to call almost every time. I'm certainly not folding, by the way. So I I call 1,200. The splashy 40-year-old guy also calls. So at this point, I'm actually not loving my hand. The turn we get the 8 of hearts, though. So now we have a straight draw, a flush draw, and a pair. And now they check to me on the turn. So this is an interesting spot because my pair is almost certainly not good. So if my pair is not good, do I have fold equity? And I don't know. I mean, this is a tough spot because sometimes players will fold almost their entire range if you bet. Like the good lag kid, he may just fold out hands like pocket jacks if I bet, fearing that I have, well, a hand kind of like I have, maybe a hand like 8-7, maybe a hand like 10-9, maybe a hand like 7-6, etc. So there are a lot of hands that I certainly could have at this point that crush my opponent, and if they are behind at the moment, it's usually with a hand like I have, 9-7 or something like that has a pretty good amount of equity. So quite often whenever my opponent does have me beat, he's going to lose to an improved hand on the river. So I think we can go either way in this spot between betting or checking. If we think the splashy 40-year-old guy may stick around with a lot of absolute junk, like maybe hands like ace 6 or something like that, then betting's fine. I don't know. I think betting or checking are both fine. If we bet and get check raise, that's a pretty annoying spot because now we can't really fold, but at the same time, we are almost certainly behind. So if we think you're going to get check raise, you should be much more inclined to not bet. But if you think you're going to get called or get people to check fold, then betting's obviously great. So I can go either way. I don't know if there's a definitively right play here. I would probably lean towards checking in general. I bet on the big side, again, to try to get people to make big folds. I bet 4,000 into the 5,500 pot, but we get 2 calls. So that's normally not good. When you get 2 calls here, I just have to be done with this hand. I don't think we can bluff people anymore. I'm just completely done with it. So instead of being completely done with it, we river a straight flush. That's good. When you river a straight flush, you should be pretty happy. So now the pot is 17,000. They check around to me. I have 16,000 behind. So should we just go all in or should we make a smaller bet? And I think you probably just want to go all in on this river. I don't think many players are folding a 9. And if our opponents do have hands like sets, I'm not sure they're going to call any bet unless it is a very small bet. And I think I would just rather go for full value. Obviously, there aren't too many nines in either of our opponent's ranges, especially the good lag kid should not have very many nines at all. And the splashy 40-year-old guy, I mean, who knows what he has? He probably has all sorts of junk. But I think we just want to go ahead and make a pretty sizable bet. So I do something a little bit interesting. I bet almost all of my stack, everything besides 1,700. And this is something I've experimented with in tournaments, just leaving yourself a few big blinds behind in case you're beat. Obviously, I'm not worried about being beat this time. You don't want to make it, you don't leave 1,700 behind only when you have the nuts. You want to do it every time. And the purpose of this is to conserve chips when you happen to be beat. And it's very well known in tournaments that as your stack gets shorter, your chips become more valuable. And as you get a deeper stack, those chips become a little bit less valuable. For example, if you have, well, let's assume you're playing heads up or three-handed. Let's assume you're playing three-handed and you have 90% of the chips and the other two guys have 10% of the chips. Both of those guys' stacks are worth a ton because they're already in the money and they're going to be guaranteed another payout jump. One of them is at least. And they're going to have a lot of equity. This is just standard individual or independent chip model principles. I guess it's beyond the scope of this exact video. You can check out my book, Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, Volume 1. We talk about that some. Anyway, as your stack gets shorter, it becomes more valuable. So conserving even a tiny stack of 10 big blinds is quite beneficial. So that is what I do. I bet almost all my stack, and I'm doing this with all the hands I'm planning on betting. I'm always leaving a little bit behind. We're not doing it because we have the straight flush or anything like that. Splashy guy calls. Good loose aggressive guy goes all in. Well, clearly you would think this guy has a very good hand. And then the splashy guy, I think, calls off, right? Well, obviously I call. Splashy guy calls off as well. So, like, what are we even expecting to see here? I think the good loose aggressive kid just must have a very good hand to shove in this spot. Splashy 40-year-old guy, he didn't show his hand, but he was commenting to the guy next to him after this hand that, oh man, I didn't even see the flush up there. So he clearly just had a 9, or maybe even had worse. Maybe he had 2 pair or something like that. Maybe he didn't even see the straight available. And he ended up paying off incredibly poorly. On this river, when facing my river bet, if you do have a 9, what are you supposed to do? Wow, what a bad spot. I guess you're supposed to call. Then when the good loose aggressive kid shoves, I think you just have to fold, even though you've put in a ton of chips. Notice the pot is 90,000, right? So it's a huge pot. Whenever you face ridiculous action on the river, if you don't have the nuts, you just need to get out of the way, even against people who are normally somewhat loose and somewhat aggressive. So this worked out about as well as possible. On the river, I was going to just check behind on all the blank rivers. I don't think we need to bluff again at that point because no one's going to fold 2 pair or set or an overpair, I don't think. I mean, maybe the good loose aggressive kid would fold an overpair on the river. But this splashy guy probably isn't folding a whole lot. You have to be aware that some people just don't fold. And if your opponents just aren't going to fold, then you don't want to bluff. Even though we do need to bluff with some hands, and our hand is certainly a nice one to bluff with, assuming we are very confident we're beat, which I think you have to be whenever it goes bet call on the flop and the turn. So this is a good hand to bluff with because it blocks a straight. It blocks a lot of 2 pairs. So this is one where you would consider bluffing, but against a splashy guy who may be a calling station, I think it's fine just to not have a bluffing range on the river if you think you're going to get called a bunch. So anyway, that's going to be it for this hand. This one worked out about as well as possible. Well, whenever you river a straight flush and you get multi-way action, you're usually pretty happy. If you enjoyed this video, definitely check out my interactive training site, pokercoaching.com. There we have homework questions each month where I ask a pretty in-depth question. Like, for example, what would your bluffing range be on this river versus 2 competent players? And you have to go through and try to figure out what your range looks like and then figure out which hands you want to be bluffing with in this spot. And then we have a homework review webinar each month where I get online and I go through all of your answers and try to let you know what I think is good about your thought process, what I think maybe could be improved on. And doing that kind of thing will definitely help you improve your game. Since we started pokercoaching.com, I guess it was about 8 months ago now, we've had multiple players final tabling major poker tournaments. You know, they're getting 100K scores, whereas before they had relatively little cashes. And I'm glad to see such improvement in those players' games. So I'm happy with the way it's going. So thank you very much for being here today. And be sure to check back next week at pokernews.com for another educational poker hand. Thanks for watching.